Greetings, fellow quitters, and welcome back to the Command Q podcast. We're your hosts. I'm John Pelfrey.
And I'm Mari Casey.
And if you've ever had an interviewer ask you the question, do you have any questions for me? And you felt enormous pressure and you don't know what to say in that situation, this quick quit is for you. Today, we're going to talk about how to quit asking bad questions and how to get ready for an interview so that you will have the info that you need to ask the right questions and sort of not get the runaround. So, what is a question that you're tired of answering, Mari?
Oh my gosh. Personally, it's like, where's my shoes or my keys? I get the shoe question from my kids a lot and the keys question from my husband a lot. I think it's those two questions. And then I think as a business owner, it's like, when am I going to get paid? Like, that's another question I get a lot. Like, it's always right there. It's printed on the thing. It tells you. But yeah, I feel like I'm kind of constantly answering questions, just batting them around all day, more or less, over and over.
Yeah. For me, it's the daily question of what are we going to have for dinner? That's the one.
That's a good one.
I think we all would like that one to go away. Just make the food magically appear.
Yeah.
I really want that Jetsons, like the Jetsons housekeeper that just makes the food, or you push the button and the thing's just, when is that? Like, somebody make that so that we can just eliminate the question of what are we going to have for dinner?
I agree. I forgot about that one. That one haunts me every single day because it's like there's five of us, like, and they all want to eat every like 4 hours or something. It's just like, come on.
Yeah. It's just that question never goes away. And I know that my wife is the same way. It's just like, some nights I just don't care. I'm just eating for the sake of putting the food in my mouth so that I have the nutrients that I need. And then, of course, other nights I want to think about it and we want to, do whatever. But a lot of nights it's just like, some form of chicken, some form of rice or a carb, and then some form of some veg. I'm good. Like, it doesn't matter what style it's made in. Let's eliminate that one from our world entirely. So that leads us to what makes a bad question.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this last week. I feel like you mentioned this, and this is really a good jumping off point, but I think questions that are kind of like weaponized a little bit or trapping. So the question of like, did you really think that was a good idea? Like, everyone's had that thrown at them by somebody. And I've probably thrown that at a few people. So I think that those types of questions are just bad questions because they're leading or they're built to be manipulative. Like, I don't know if you thought that was a good idea, but I would think you should do this. What do you think? Like that kind of setup.
Yeah.
I'm really good at those. Like, put you in the like, here's the right way to do it. But I see that you did it this way. Do you think you should keep doing it that way, or you should go back to my right way of doing it? So I think those types of questions are never going to go well.
Yeah, agreed. I think it does work if you're dealing with a toddler. It does help to sort of redirect them. Okay, what were you thinking? But once you're dealing with adults, it's insulting and not helpful to the situation. To me, that situation is much better addressed by like just speaking frankly about what's going on, and then how do we solve the problem next time? And, with always just looking forward to how do we make it better next time, as opposed to you're an idiot and I would have done it better.
Yeah. You have to watch yourself because you'll fall into the pattern of repeating those kind of same bad questions. But it is like when you're dealing with a toddler. My daughter started babysitting, and I've been kind of sharing this trick with her. We all done it. We've had kids where it's like, would you like to eat the green beans or would you like to eat the carrots? Your choice. And that's a great technique. And I think it's funny because now with me having middle schoolers, the idea of asking really good questions is important because otherwise, you don't get any kind of feedback. It's like a dead, like, how was today? Good. So I've been reading more about how to ask these questions that open up conversation where they can't just say good, yes, no, bad. And I think they kind of change as you go through life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine line between an open-ended question that's very difficult to answer. It's just too open. It's too like, well, I have the whole world at my feet as a choice to answer. That's not directed enough or detailed enough or focused enough. But at the same time, you don't want to ask a question that's always like yes or no, black or white, either this or that. Unless it's a situation where you're dealing with a toddler and you're trying to like get them to eat and you're making them feel like they have a choice when they really don't. That question, though, actually is also a good one when you're dealing with clients, in my mind, too. You can lead a client to water, but you can't always make them drink. But if you give them, and this is sort of the classic design thing or whatever, you give them 3 choices and highlight the one that you want them to choose the most. And you kind of, third choice, you kind of blow it off and are like, yeah, and I did this other one and whatever. And, so you can kind of lead them down a path in that way and make them feel like they have a choice, even though you've really built one up as the clear answer, but you've got to do it in a delicate way. And you really kind of have to be a salesperson when it comes down to doing those types of tricks with questions. I'm always amazed at magicians and their ability to lead you into a line of thinking by asking you questions and telling you things in subtle ways.
Yeah.
And then they always get you to pick the 5 of hearts. And you're like, I don't know why I got the 5 of hearts here. And you how did you push that onto my brain in that way? But they do. I mean, that's a skill. It'd be interesting to talk to a magician about those types of questions.
I need to learn those techniques. Those are great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when they do that. They're reading your mind, but they're really not. They're just making you think what they want you to think. So how do you ask questions that actually lead to clarity? I think this is a really good, a good sort of topic to chat about. Because we have this every day.
Right. Well, when we were talking about this, I think yesterday, we were talking about it's like called the Honda why, where it's like, but why? But why? But why? It's like slowly getting down. Like, my kids, for example, I feel sad today. Why? Well, I feel sad because of this. This happened. This person looked at me weird, or I had a tuna fish sandwich instead of a chicken sandwich. So maybe bummed out. Okay. Why did that happen? Okay, well, maybe that happened because I didn't spend enough time preparing my lunch. Why did that happen? Because I stayed up too late last night. So it's like, it's kind of slowly getting you down to the source of information, and like the real reason behind the sadness is because you were up too late last night. So it kind of set off the whole day kind of got derailed because you were tired in the morning. So I do feel like that kind of thing is a really good way to get down to clarity, as long as it's not being used in a manipulative way to kind of make someone feel stupid, but to really get to the details of the information behind it. It's a classic like therapist move. Like, I've been on the receiving end of it sometimes. You're just like, stop drilling down. But it can really be helpful when you're trying to get clarity around a reason for someone's answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to, if it's business project related, whatever, like I tend to lean back on sort of the who, what, when, where, why, and how of like you learn about investigative reporting, or you as a kid, you learn how to write, and you need to answer all of those questions in an essay within a page to explain whatever happened in history or whatever. I always go back to that stuff because as a project manager or somebody who's like trying to clarify projects or details a lot, you have to answer who's going to do it, what are we doing, where are we doing it? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it? And if you can get answers to all those that are clear, and you keep like sort of asking, like, well, who's going to do it? Well, either Mario will do it or John's going to do it. Well, we need one owner of this, right? So who's really going to own it? And you just keep asking it until someone owns it. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to do it this way, or we could do it this way. Okay, but which one are we going to pick first? Drilling down in that way so that there's clarity by the end of it, and you walk away with a project brief or whatever that is clear for everyone. To me, that's always the direction that I go, because I think about it sort of very analytically and very process oriented. And just in like normal everyday life, when I'm asking questions, let's say of my son, as he's, in college now, and we are talking about like real world issues in real time, and he's researched on it and knows more about most of the things than I do at this point and all of that. Most of my questions are clarifying questions because I'm asking him to educate me. Sometimes I already know the answer or my perspective, but I want to see how he thinks. And so I'm curious. And a lot of that is like, just tell me more. Tell me more. And that's not exactly a question, but it kind of is like, okay, I'd like to know more about this. Tell me what you think or where this came from. And people love to talk. So if you just say, well, tell me more about that, then you can get a lot of clarity that way too.
Yeah, I feel like that is true, except for, well, like part of the questions too were like around timing with questions. And I realized, like, I don't see my kids all day. I go to pick them up and I'm like, tell me all the things you've been doing. What'd you have for lunch? Who'd you sit by? What was math class like? Did you turn that paper in? And they're just fried. Like, they're just so tired. They've had a long day. All they want to do is like turn their brains off, and I'm just like hitting them with, car questions. And I've realized now, because then I get those short answers and then I get frustrated because they're not telling me stuff and they're just done. So now I'll ask them a few questions and I'll kind of see what the vibe is. But the timing on that is like, they're just tired. So then I'll let them have a little snack and then we can have like questions at dinner. And I think that's important too, even with like working with clients, because you and I have a pretty good idea of reading people, I think. When you get into a situation with their client, you need to know when you should stop asking questions, because then they're done. And I think that's a technique I think I've figured out as I've gotten older. It's like, I can sense like, we're done here. We need to stop. And then I can follow up with some questions in an email, or we can have a second conversation. I've seen people, and I've been on the receiving end of that, just like that rapid fire questioning where you're just getting beat down and you're just getting angrier and angrier. And I think having the sense of when you need to turn off your questions is super, super important, because otherwise you're just going to get someone who's going to 100% shut down and it's not going to go any further.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes you got to know when to quit. And a lot of times, if it's a really deep discussion that's hard, with a lot of unknowns or whatever it is, sometimes it is multiple conversations, multiple small conversations, multiple small questions over time, as opposed to trying to solve all of the world's problems right here, right now in this 30-minute meeting that we have. Like, let's just focus in on one thing that we can handle and do right now and talk about, and then we'll come back and deal with the rest of it later. I think people who are very curious tend to want to really dig and dig and dig and dig. And we have to learn to be patient with people who aren't interested in digging as far as we want to go sometimes too.
Yeah.
Something that I've learned.
There's definitely, that's what interrogation is, right? And if nobody likes to be interrogated, and I realize too, like sometimes my questions can switch over from just like curiosity, like what's your days like, to like interrogation. Those aren't good questions. That's just kind of like too much.
Yeah. It's too much with kids or whatever. Like Porter and I had this running joke whenever I'd pick him up for school. I'd be like, "Did you learn anything today?" And he'd say, "Nope." And then we just wouldn't say anything for the rest of the drive home. And I never expected him to say anything different than that.
Uh-huh.
Nope. Didn't learn anything. My response usually would be like, "Well, why do I send you to school then?" And he'd be like, "I don't know."
Oh, that's funny.
But, I never expected anything more than that out of him. It just kind of became a sort of a joke between us. And then I would let him listen to music or whatever on the way home. And then sometimes he'd come back a few hours later and answer the question. Which is also something else too. Like, be open to the fact that if you plant a question in someone's head, you put a seed in there and they don't answer you immediately, that doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it. And that doesn't mean that they won't come back and give you an answer. It just means that maybe they are the type of person who needs to consider it and really put some thought into it. And they're not comfortable sort of responding off the cuff all the time.
Right.
But sometimes a little patience or a little bit of like, "Hey, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's okay if you don't have an answer right now. It's just something that I want to put in your head, and then we can talk about it on Wednesday, or we can talk about it tonight, or whatever." Doing that lets people off the hook and allows them to have time to process too.
Yeah.
So
I like that. That's a good technique, because it kind of disarms the need to respond really quickly and then maybe have a dumb answer or have a path answer, is to be able to be like, just here's a question, noodle on it, get back to me with some answers. And that's a good technique.
Yeah. And it also keeps people from feeling defensive in this situation too. It gives them some autonomy over when they're going to answer. And then that empowers them to like actually think about it more and to feel comfortable with what they're saying. So I really like that technique, especially when you're talking about like big questions, difficult questions, or complex problems that you're trying to solve or whatever. Like, sometimes it does help to just get some space and then come back and you'll see it more clearly. Yeah. All right. Well, we ready for the lightning round here?
Lightning round.
All right. So, Mari, you used to be a waitress. Can you remember a particularly weird customer question or customer request?
I had people ask if they could take silverware home before, but you're just like, no, like, no. Okay. I've had people like, I remember this one time, and this was kind of like, I don't know if I should let you do this or not, but we didn't. But this person saw that somebody had a lot of leftovers on their table, and they asked if they could take their leftovers home with them. I was like, I don't know, that's a little bad.
Yeah.
And then people always like, I worked at like a pretty high-end restaurant. So usually I brought in people who are, know they were going to spend a lot of money, but then people who are asking if they could get some money back if they didn't eat all their food. Like, okay, this is a big meal. Like, I'm not going to eat the rest of it. Or they'd eaten all of it except for like 10% of it. Like, I didn't like it. And can I get my money back? And I'm like, no, you can't. You've eaten. You just don't eat that pepper. Like, you ate the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. If someone takes one bite of it and says like, "Oh, this tastes like cleaning fluid or cleaning solution," then you go like, "Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we'll swap it out." You get something. You 95% of the meal. It's no.
Yeah. I
believe somebody would ask to be able to take home someone else's leftovers. That just seems gross to me.
Yeah. I thought they were joking, and then they weren't. And it was like I forget, it was like a salad or something like that. I don't think they even ate their salad. Like, if they're not going to eat it, can I have it? And I was like, first of all, who takes a salad to go? Like,
yeah,
it's just so. It once you work with the public, and I also worked as a bank teller, it's just nothing surprises you. You're like, this is just fun. People are interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if you don't ask, you never know. There are certainly a lot of people out there in the world that are just like, I'm just going to ask. And then worst thing they can do is say no. I'm not one of those people. I've been around them before, and it's, no, I didn't want the salad. So we're told we should always have questions at the end of an interview or a kickoff meeting or whatever else. What is your go-to for when you're feeling blank? When you, like, somebody says, like, do you have any questions for me? And you go,
Usually I always try to have some questions. I think that's something I always try to pass along to like students who are interviewing is do some research and know who you're talking to and have a few questions. Like the question could be related to something you saw in their history. Like, oh, I saw that you had worked at Coca-Cola 10 years ago. What was that experience like compared to where you are now? I think another good question if you're interviewing is like, is this a new position or is this an existing position? Like, what did the person in the previous, like, what happened? Did they leave? Well, and then like, how could you see me based on my experience be a good fit for this organization? And I think it's always good to ask questions related to what you're trying to get to. So whenever I'm asking questions, hopefully I have a point as to what I'm trying to figure out. So if you're interviewing, you're trying to find out, is this a good fit for me? Is this person interested in what what I have to offer? So have questions that if you haven't had those answered in the interview that are going to get you more of that information. I also think a question in an interview or even just an introduction, it's nice to have something personal that you can tie to. So if they haven't shared anything personal about them, be like, oh, well, yeah. Ask a few questions related to the job and then say like, oh, what else do you like to do in your spare time? Like, do you like to golf? Do you like to do this? Like you mentioned you work to cook. Do you like to make Coke floats? I don't know. Something that is a little bit of a personal tie to that. Then when you follow up later, you can say, oh yeah, enjoy your Coke floats. Oh, here's my notes. Or I hope you enjoy your golf. And then it like adds an emotional connection a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. My favorite go-to is what does success look like? How are we going to succeed here? If you hire me for this, or if you want us on company to do this project or whatever, it's like, what's the success criteria that we're grading this on? Or if it's project based or whatever, it's like, what does complete look like for you? When do we know this is finished? That's slightly different from success, but it does help to define a question around like, when are we done and we're going to call this quits?
That's a great one.
So those two are sort of process oriented, project oriented questions. If it's just generic interview, I would always ask the question of like, if they're replacing a previous person, I would always ask the question, why did that person leave? What was the reason? Did they get another job? Were they fired? Sometimes they can give you some of that information and sometimes they can't, but it helps to know. Not what I'm looking for there is I'm not looking for an answer to the question. What I'm looking for is their body reflex and response to the question. And because that tells me a lot about it. Like if the person, it tells me a lot about the person that I'm going to work with. Did they not like the person? Well, why didn't they like the person? Can I dig in and understand a little bit more of that? So if I ask, why did the person leave? And then I say, well, what does success look like? Can I marry that stuff up together to make it look like, okay, either I fit here or I don't? And any other types of cultural questions about the company, are there expected, like, what are the work hours? What's a normal day look like is another one. What's a normal day look like for a person in this role? What time do they get in? What do they do first thing in the morning? What do they do, before lunch, after lunch? How many meetings do you schedule for these things? Are you a meeting heavy organization is a really, really important one too, because if I'm tasked with like doing a lot of stuff, but I'm also supposed to be in meetings for 6 hours a day, then it's a question of like, okay, well then I only have 2 hours to do the stuff and I got to be in meetings for 6 hours a day. How does all the work get done? And if the answer is, well, you got to work 12 hours a day, then I'm like, thank you very much. See you later.
Thanks, Becca.
So all of those are sort of clarifying questions around the culture and the expectation. I remember I was in an interview once and somebody said to me, this is a startup and the way that it works is we all come to work and we work 8 to 5 and then we go home and we get dinner and then we all get back in line from 8 until 11. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm out. I'm not interested in that. So you get to see your kids and everything for like 3 hours a day. And then I was like, whoa,
no.
That is, and it's like, do I get equity? No. Okay, well, cool. Then I don't.
Yeah. I feel like it's important when you're building questions in general, just to think of like what you're trying to get out of it. And I think especially when you're looking for jobs, you should have an idea of what you want, what job and life and world you want to live in. And then if those questions weren't answered, to give you a clear picture of if that's possible, those are the questions you lead with. So I think it is nice to like have an idea and then have those questions that you need to get answered to clarify the whole picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last one. What's a good response for when you're not prepared to answer a question?
Ooh, this is like the political, like, dun, 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 sidestep. I think you just say, that's a great question. Like, I would love to like do some thinking on it and get back to you.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of times for me, it's, I don't know, and I'll find out more and get back to you. I have been in many, many situations where I didn't know the answer to something, and I don't try to BS my way through it. I just say, I don't know, but I'll find out, or I'll find someone else who can answer that question for you. Because the last thing I want to do is to give somebody an impression that is false and then have to come back later and say, hey, I was wrong. I screwed up. I set an expectation with you that I can't live up to now. Like, that's way worse than, oh no. And if, of course, I won't phrase it that way, but yeah, I find that honesty is the best policy when it comes to that sort of thing. Don't just make it up on the fly and then have to live with consequences later. That's how you build a lot of stress in your life. The people that do that, I see they're always stressed out because they're covering for themselves all the time. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in and talking about how to quit asking bad questions. If you're new to the podcast and this is your first episode, you can find more about us at commandqpodcast.com. We can also be found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. We would love to have you join our community of proud quitters. Yeah. So until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Mari.
And we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.